Hello and welcome to another Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm reviewing two films, Babysitter and The Nature of Love, both directed by Monia Chokri. So Joe, who used to do the reviews with me, told me that Babysitter was a great film. And given that Chokri's later film, The Nature of Love, just started streaming on Mubi in the UK, I decided to watch that as well. So I'm going to review both films in one review. So let's start with Babysitter. Joe told me that he laughed all the way through. We do have very similar tastes, so I trust his recommendations mostly. On this film, however, Joe and I totally disagree. I don't think I even raised a smile once. The comedy seemed kind of slapstick, cartoonish. I just found it silly, not funny. I guess this is a matter of comedy taste. The film is about a man's attempt to rehabilitate his public image after a misogynistic incident at a wrestling match that goes viral. I found the supposed comedy element of this film, and I think it really wants to have a strong comedic element. I found it so unconvincing that it devalued everything else in the film. However, I persevered with it, and I think that actually the film does have a lot of good qualities. It's an intelligent script around gender roles, modern masculinity, male entitlement, men wrestling with knowing that they have to change without really changing. This is definitely a feminist film, but there are many shots which appear to be shot through the male gaze. I've watched two Coralie Farja films recently, The Substance and Revenge, and it's interesting to compare these two filmmakers because I think they both play with using the male gaze. But my feeling is that Chokri is less successful in doing this than Farja. I don't think it's an easy thing to do for a female filmmaker to use the male gaze in a knowing way, getting the balance right between critiquing how women are objectified by men and inadvertently replicating the objectification it aims to critique. The babysitter character, Amy, is a real enigma in these terms. I couldn't completely get to grips with her role in the film. She plays such a central role both for the husband and the wife, yet beyond the kind of slapstick comedy, Amy definitely is there to disrupt the males and the sense in which they're actually in control. I'm not sure what role she is supposed to be serving with the wife. She's good at the babysitting, she's good at helping the wife in a kind of surreal and submissive way, and it turns out that she does have a kind of wisdom, almost like she's an angel come to help this family. But her persona is so sexualized. To me, it did feel like a reinforcement of traditional gender stereotypes. There just wasn't enough irony or humour to really make this work for me, unlike in the two Farja films. My feeling was that Chokri gets the balance wrong here, that the film too much mimics the male gaze rather than subverting it. Of course, it's really hard to judge these things objectively. I'm a male, so inevitably there is a large element of the male gaze in how I view a film, however progressive and modern I try to be. So perhaps it's the opposite of what it feels like to me, that Farja is conceding too much by leaving me feeling more comfortable with it than in Babysitter. There were things that I like about this film. The film has a surreal, absurd quality. The cinematography really works in maintaining this. Cool use of rapid cuts, zooms and close-ups, and it's often unsettling. It's really creative and definitely original. It's interesting how there's a cake eating scene that almost matches the Dennis Quaid shrimp scene in The Substance. The two men are having a conversation in a restaurant, but the camera zooms right into him chomping on some cake. I also liked the cage fighting scene where the two bloodied fighters roll around on the floor, smudging blood as they go. The camera pulls back in an overhead shot, which is really stunning. And there's something of the Yves Klein performance artwork where he used women as human paintbrushes. If she was referencing that, it's very clever, I think. Overall, I think the failure of the comedy for me spoiled Babysitter. But I can see that there is a lot to admire this film for. I would actually recommend it. It's definitely an interesting film, even though I wasn't 100% sure about it. So let's turn to her next film, The Nature of Love. This is the story of a philosophy professor, Sophia, drawn into a passionate affair with a carpenter called Sylvan. Sophia is married, and the marriage seems okay, but it seems to have lost its passion, and they sleep in separate bedrooms, for example. Ultimately, I think this is a film about different needs in a relationship. One person doesn't meet Sophie's needs. Her husband meets her cultural, intellectual needs, whereas Sylvan is meeting her lust, passion, more intimate needs. It's a much more conventional film than Babysitter. It reminded me of an old Woody Allen film, particularly as it seems to have been shot in a slightly older style, perhaps like a 70s TV series with sentimental and cheesy music. It's not going to light the cinema up, this film, but I nevertheless quite enjoyed it. Sophia is giving a series of lectures on love, so the film kind of hangs around a number of her lectures. The camera work is interesting when people are sitting around talking about intellectual and cultural things. The camera jerks and zooms, making the conversations feel chaotic in a fun way. I think the most interesting thing that this film explores are class and culture clashes. She accuses her husband of being elitist when he makes derogatory remarks about lower class uncultured people that they see crossing the road while stopped at traffic lights. Sophia is disgusted at his attitude. But then Sylvan isn't an intellectual, and Sophia can't help having some of these feelings herself. He makes grammatical errors, for example, and it really bothers her. The sex, the lust, the passion are all good, but she misses the intellectual when she's with him. It's an interesting reflection on long-term relationships. What is love? What is lust? How lust or fantasy can feel like love. Someone else is always more exciting. But then when reality hits, the bubble is burst. There's not much more to this film. It is perhaps somewhat predictable, very different than the surreal Babysitter. So to make a quick comparison of these two Monia Chokri films, they're quite different films. Both are accomplished filmmaking, I think. And I think they do illustrate a versatility. I'll definitely look out for what she does next. The Nature of Love is more restrained and emotionally grounded. It focuses on the complex and psychological, emotional landscapes of romantic relationships. In contrast, The Babysitter is more eccentric, more bold. It's employing a satirical tone and surreal, absurd elements to explore gender dynamics and societal expectations. When I'm putting them side by side, I'm actually hesitating to say that The Nature of Love is a better film. I definitely enjoyed it more because I just didn't connect with the humour of Babysitter. But actually, Babysitter is a much more courageous, bold film. I think I admire it more. I would recommend both these films, and I will be interested to see what she does next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.